Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good to see everyone. And tonight we are very fortunate to have a guest speaker, Rabbi Doug Cohen. I think most of you know Rabbi Cohen from the time he was in Redlands and before that in San Bernardino. So we'll hear from him a little bit later on. And in the meantime, we are going to begin our service with Dodi Li from the Song of Songs. And Lynn Yarmoff is going to light our Shabbat candles.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Thank you, Lynn. And Cantor Bob is going to lead us in the Kiddush.
Jory. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uv'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron lemaseh bereshit ki hu yom tehila lemikra kodesh זכר לציאת מצרים, כי בנו בחרת, כי אותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך ביבוא וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
L'chaim. This is a piece by Alden Solovey from his collection, This Grateful Heart, called Sephardi Quarter Note. If you listen to the space between the notes and the half notes, the space between heartbeats, you'll hear quarter notes of love and yearning, ancient music of hope and sorrow, infinite in variation, the echo of generations, notes that bend toward God, notes that linger with longing, notes that plead for redemption, notes that declare Torah is my life and mitzvot are my honor, notes that proclaim I am waiting for you, God of Abraham, notes of surrender, notes that refuse to surrender, notes that cry out to Zion and Israel, the voice of sorrow and the voice of laughter. If you listen to the space between the notes and the half notes, the rises and the falls, the trills and trumpets, you will hear a rhythm and a pulse calling out, Adon Olam, Yedid Nefesh, Shachar Avakeshcha, Yoducha Yoneh, Master of the universe, beloved of my heart, at dawn I seek you, my thoughts will praise you. In the space between the notes, dreams of God touch the core of being to become music. We continue with our second Kabbalat Shabbat song, Mizmor LeDavid.
Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid. Havul Adonai b'nei Elim, Havul Adonai kavod, Havul Adonai kevod shemo, Ishtachavo l'Adonai behadrat kodesh. Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid. Kol Adonai al hamayim harakavod. Adonai hamayim rabim, Adonai hamayim rabim. Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid. Adonai lama bo'la yashav yeshev Adonai melech le'olam. Adonai lama yiteh, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid, Mizmor LeDavid.
might have recognized some amazing guitar playing there from Jory Yarmoff. Does it really well without a guitar in sight. This is a prayer by Alden Solovey called God's Voice. What if God's voice was so near that your bones rattled as thunder echoes inside your chest? What if God's voice was so near you could feel the wind hit your face as your feet seemed to slip on shaking ground? What if awe and wonder surrounded you, so close that your knees buckled as a pillar of fire from heaven descends to earth? What if holiness packed the empty space with light as your lungs fill with the one divine breath, together with every other living being? What if God's voice is as near as your willingness to remember the moment we stood together at Sinai, amid the smoke and the lightning, hearing the great blast of the shofar? What if that moment is now? We continue with the Hatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה ביעלמא דברה חילותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בגולה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיא. יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי דקדושה בריחו לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן.
And we continue with the Baruch Hu, the call to worship.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed HaMevorach
So that was an even better trick. Eric Sabar playing the horn from far away in his home. and Cantor Bob singing without moving his lips. We've developed a lot of skills over the course of this crazy time. This is a meditation at night by Alden Solovey. God of mystery, thank you for the gift of this day, for the one ending and the one about to begin. Help me to see the moments and the hours, those already past and those to come, as blessings, as teachers. Guide me to service for your name's sake. Grant me comfort and rest so that I enter the new day with a sense of joy, hope, and peace. Then, God of old, I will become a source of love, a beacon of wonder, awe, and grace. Ahavat Olam, God's eternal love.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amecha Torah u'mitzvot, chokim u'mishpatim, otanu lemadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shachbeinu v'kumeinu nasiach b'chokecha, v'nismach b'divrei toratecha, ובמצוותיך לעולם הבא. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם בלילה.
Please join us in the Shema. Please join us in the Shema. Carolee, would you lead us in the Ve'ahavta, please?
Everybody join me. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Thank you, Carolee.
My pleasure.
This week's Torah portion is Shoftim, which means judges. And normally I kind of sprinkle little teachings about the Torah portion throughout the service, but I found this wonderful little 5-minute video made by people called, their organization's called Bim Bam. And I wanted to share that with you because I think it really does a nice job of summarizing the Torah portion. And it's narrated by Rabbi David Saperstein, who for something like 35 years was the head of the Religious Action Center of the Reform Judaism movement. So here is Bim Bam.
At Mount Sinai, God called upon the Jewish people to be a holy people, partners with God in creating a world of justice for all. In Parashat Shoftim, which means judges, they're now on the banks of the Jordan, almost at the Promised Land, when God tells the Israelites to appoint judges and police officers so they can begin to administer this justice. God's final instruction to them is among the Torah's most famous lines, Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, or justice, justice shall you pursue. Why justice, justice shall you pursue? The second justice must have some meaning. Some say justice is repeated for emphasis, to teach that pursuing justice is among the most important things a person can do. Others say that it's repeated to teach that we must be just in the way we go about our pursuit of justice. Here in Shoftim, we learn about 5 kinds of justice. First, God gives the Israelites a lengthy list of instructions about what they can and cannot do when they worship. They can't plant a tree or build a monument near God's altar, and they aren't allowed to sacrifice any animal that has a blemish. Above all, they're warned not to worship idols or intentionally break God's law because the punishment is death. Addressing the second form of justice, God tells the children of Israel that when they arrive in the Promised Land, if they really want, they can be like other nations around them and appoint a king. Criteria for qualified royalty are pretty strict. The king must be from their own nation, must not keep in excess of horses, wives, silver, or gold. In addition, the king must write his own Torah scroll and read it regularly to remind him to follow its laws. And he must rule fairly, treating all people alike, no matter how rich or poor they are. For the third form of justice, God tells the children of Israel to create cities of refuge in the Promised Land. If a person accidentally kills someone, he or she can flee to these cities and be safe from relatives of the dead who might seek revenge. But if someone intentionally commits murder and tries to escape into the city of refuge, the elders of that city are to send him or her directly into the hands of the vengeful family. Carrying on with the theme of crime, the fourth part of Parashat Shoftim covers witnesses and testimony. In order for testimony to be valid, not one, but two witnesses must give the exact same testimony. If it is discovered that two witnesses got together to make up false testimony, the Torah says to rid the city of that evil, in this case, to kick out the false witnesses. In another famous line, the Israelites are told not to have compassion for them, a life for a life, an eye for an eye, and so on, to scare the daylights out of others who might have been considering providing false testimony of their own. The fifth and final form of justice is about the rules of warfare. God tries to comfort the Israelites, telling them not to be fearful or faint-hearted when they go out to war, even outnumbered by their enemies. Easier said than done. But officers were also to protect the lives of soldiers who had a lot to lose or a lot of living left to do, by telling their armies, whoever has built a new house but hasn't lived in it yet, go home. Whoever has planted a vineyard and hasn't picked the fruit yet, you go home. And whoever is engaged to a woman but hasn't married her yet, you can go home too. For 3,000 years, the command, justice, justice shall you pursue, has defined who the Jewish people are and what they're about, especially today, in the face of the critical need to ensure justice on issues like environmental devastation, economic injustice, genocidal activity around the globe. This call warns us. We dare not wait for opportunities to do justice, but rather must act assertively to address the great moral issues of our time. That is our heritage. May we prove worthy.
And you'll see that this actually has a connection to our speaker tonight. Before we got those wonderful laws about justice, we had to get out of Egypt. And to do so, we had to cross through the sea on dry land, at which point we sang the Milchamocha.
One, two, three, four.
Nora tehila, oh sefele, Nora tehila, oh sefele. Malachutecha, albanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe, Moshe u'Miriam. Zehi, anu ve'ameru, Adonai lo, ve'olam va'ed. Mi chamocha, Adonai mi kamocha neda v'kodesh Nora tehilot o sefele Nora tehilot o sefele Malachutecha ra'uvanecha Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe Moshe u'Miriam Zehi anu ve'ameru Adonai mo ve'olam
Final prayer by Alden Solovi called Shabbat Settles in Jerusalem. Shabbat settles in Jerusalem like a dove, gliding on silent wings. Shabbat settles in my heart, a lover with open arms, embracing my soul with song, wrapped in quiet breathing. I send blessings into the world, light, bread, prayers of peace. And we continue with a song about Shabbat.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי אותי לעולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת, שבת וינובש. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי אותי לעולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ברית עולם.
We continue with the tefillah, the central prayer of our service. If you want to rise, you can, but you can also stay seated. And you can pray silently while we're looking for the prayer.
There we go. Adonai sifatai, sifatai tiftach, ofi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai sifatai, sifatai tiftach, ofi yagid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Hawel HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot v'Imaot, Umevii Geula Livnei V'nehem L'man Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshe u'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam, Adonai mechai kol atah rav lehoshia. Morit hatal, מכלכל חיים בחסד, בחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמנת לחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יללוך סלע, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Let's take a moment to pray silently. And we continue with Shalom Rav, a great peace. And Bob is demonstrating a great peace.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amecha Tasim Laolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amecha Tasim Laolam. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom. V'tov b'einecha levarech et amecha Yisrael. B'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה שלום.
We take a moment now to think of those in need of healing, whether of body, of mind, or of spirit. We think of congregants and friends and family of congregants: Jonathan Davidson, Brenda Oppenheim, Randy Rubin, Ben Henderson, Marty Tarmo, Les Wilkerson, Rabbi Steve Robbins, Gloria Mangus, Steve Lux, Carol and David Altstadt, Jan Judman, Emily Pasquarelli, Mitchell Smith, Larry Miller, Julie Lapidus, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Irv Richards, Norman Mezzi, Pamela Mangus, Johnny Sickhat, Aharon Pincus. And please add names either by unmuting yourselves or in the chat, and I will read the names out loud. Robin Kurland, David Kurland, Therese Spellman, Robert Doctor, Casey Olson, Edwina Liepman, Babette Cooper, Pauline and Jerry Geerlings, Ron Jones, Ruth and Sandra Landis, Sandra Stokely, Mary Parks, Kim Coe, Raul Camacho, Amada Quijano, Rabbi Bennett Herman, Ron Inostrosa, Paul Gretsch Sr., Alex Trebek, Jeremy Kermit, Doug Hardy, Bob Brandler, Ivan Brandler. Are there any other names that you'd like to add?
Don Colwell.
And please join us in the Misha Berach.
מי שברך אבותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב. מי שברך אמותינו, שרה, רבקה, לאה ורחל. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, 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 and bless us as well. Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us with the power of your hope. May our hearts be filled with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Bless us with the vision for tomorrow. Help us to reach out to those in pain. May the warmth of friendship ease our sorrow. Give us courage, give us faith, show us the way. Mi sheberach avoteinu, mi sheberach imotenu. Hear our prayer, 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 and bless us as well. Hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well.
And of course, very appropriately tonight, when we're in the middle of a pandemic that has taken over 170,000 lives and has rendered other people ill, we really need these prayers of healing. And we are so fortunate to be able to have Rabbi Doug Cohen, who is going to speak to us about healing. I'll give you a little background on him first. He has been the rabbi of Temple Beth Jacob in Newburgh, New York since 2019. And previously, Rabbi Cohen served for 5 years as a rabbinic transition specialist. He led several synagogues in that capacity, including at Temple Beth El in San Pedro, California, Temple Emmanuel in Birmingham, Alabama, and Temple Shir Tikva in Boston's western suburbs. Many of you know him as the rabbi for many years at Temple Emmanuel Congregation Emmanuel, rather, in San Bernardino and then in Redlands, California, from 2001 through 2014. And that's where he steered the congregation through a relocation, a capital campaign, and a construction program. And they now have a beautiful building over there. As I mentioned before, our Torah portion and the piece that I shared with you by David Saperstein is particularly apropos tonight because Rabbi Cohen has been very concerned with social justice issues as well as community relations in Israel. He served for 8 years on the Reform Movement's National Commission on Social Action, which was led, as I mentioned, by Rabbi David Saperstein, and he was a member of the National Board of ARTSA, the Association of Reformed Zionists of America. Rabbi Cohen graduated from Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio in 1981, and he received his master's degree in Hebrew letters from Hebrew Union College in 1985. He was ordained from Hebrew Union College's campus in Cincinnati in 1987, and he received an honorary degree from that institution in 2012, an honorary doctorate. He has published numerous articles in the press and Jewish scholarly and general periodicals on American Jewish history, and has written several feature series on his frequent travels to Israel and to Europe. After his own diagnosis and treatment for cancer in 2004, Rabbi Cohen focused on writing and teaching about Judaism and health. His first book on Judaism and cancer was published in 2008 by the URJ Press, and it's called Life, Faith, and Cancer: Jewish Journeys Through Diagnosis, Treatment, and Recovery. Since then, Rabbi Cohen has traveled broadly to speak on the themes of the book and to bring support to the Jewish and wider cancer communities. Also, Rabbi Cohen is a contributing author of the textbook, World Religions for Healthcare Professionals. Rabbi Cohen's most recent volume, titled Broken Fragments: Jewish Experiences of Alzheimer's Disease Through Diagnosis, Adaptation, and Moving On, was nominated for the National Jewish Book Award. Rabbi Cohen is also the father of two children, Benjamin and Alina, and he resides in Beacon and is lovingly engaged to his fiancée, Susan R.S. Wertheim, who is with him this evening. So welcome, Rabbi Doug Cohen.
Well, good evening, good Shabbos. It's so nice to reconnect with so many familiar and warm faces. And it's so nice to hear Bob singing and to hear Rabbi Singer leading you in worship and to see your beautiful ark. I remember when you were rebuilding the sanctuary in the ark and making it round and approachable. And I know what it's like to build a building. So I applaud the work that you did to make your sanctuary so rich and wonderful. And I always enjoyed all the time that we shared our bimas together with Rabbi Singer and with Cantor Bob, and that we would alternate between our campuses, or I can say campuses because we had a few, and be able to have our synagogues be shared by the freeway and to be together again. So I shouldn't share with you what Rabbi Singer did not mention is that earlier in the summer or the spring or whatever, I lost track of time, she very graciously came via the electronic universe and spoke here in my synagogue. And she spoke about Rikers Island and the travesty and tragedy of what's happening there with the women who are incarcerated in the prison that's named for Rabbi Singer's family. And she had just, as you know, published a fantastic op-ed piece in the New York Times. And so we were honored to have you, Rabbi Singer, be with us then. And so it was our thought that we would do this together and share this time together. The only difference is by me, it's 10:30 almost. But I'm glad your service started at 6:30, not at 7:30. So in deference to Rabbi Singer, I would like to, let's see if I can do this, I've got several things on my screen. I would like to bring up on the screen, I got to first open it up. Hang on a second. Let me make sure I've got this up. Let's see. Let's go back to share screen. I would like to put our Torah portion back on the screen. Can we see it? Can we see it okay?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
This is the Torah portion about which Rabbi Singer spoke a moment ago. And I'd like to focus on that opening verse for just a moment. Shotrim v'shoftim titen lecha, you shall appoint magistrates and officials for your tribes. What's fascinating is that word you shall appoint. It doesn't really say it in the Hebrew. It says it by inclination, by implication, and it says for you, lecha. It says it, let's see if I can do it right here for you. Right there it says lecha, which means for you. And the question is, what does that mean? What does that mean, make for you? And in honor of Rabbi Singer, I'd like to suggest a commentary from the Or HaChaim, from a wonderful 18th century commentary, which I've got right here in the middle of the page. Let's just highlight it for you, right over there. And this is in depth, this is in appreciation of the great work of your rabbi. What does it mean you shall appoint for yourself? And forgive my politics, I can speak politically to you. I can't do it in my congregation, but I can do it in your synagogue today. But let me read the commentary, the 18th century commentary of Chaim ben Attar wrote, this is an appeal to the people who appoint the judges and enforcers not to think that seeing that they've appointed them, that they are themselves not subject to their authority. I've got no idea who Chaim ben Attar could have been speaking about, maybe about someone of today, maybe about someone of antiquity. And for those who've been watching the political world today, there's some who think they appoint judges and don't have to follow them. So I wanted just to raise that because it's our Torah portion for today. And it's tzedek to yourself, and this is another way to look at that text. But really what I wanted to do was I wanted to address the theme that Rabbi Singer asked me to address issues of illness. And so I want to bring to you right now another text. This one, come on, Doug. This one was written by me. This is an article which I wrote for the Reform Movement's Rabbinic Journal in 2012. The Reformed Jewish Quarterly had a volume just addressing illness. And in it, I ask a question, which I want to ask you today. I'm going to invite, if you'd like, before we get into the text, I'm going to ask us, has anybody here, and unmute and say yes if you'd like to, has anybody ever heard someone say, everything happens for a reason? Anybody ever hear that one?
Yes.
Yep. How many of us believe it?
Yep.
Don't believe it.
Really. The reasons why things happen may be ex post facto. I know that people have said everything happens for a reason. How many of us can find that reason in COVID? It's tough. It's tough. And we're going to leave it to the historians down the pike. And this begs the question, in Jewish life, what's the meaning of illness? What could be the reason for illness if everything happens for a reason? And if so, how do we apply it to 175,000 Americans perishing in 6 months, 5 months? For what reason? And especially, I read an article the other day that said, by today, 2 out of 3 Americans know someone who's been ill. I know in my synagogue those who are ill. I'm sure you do in yours. And too many of us know people who've been quite ill. But what could the reason be for illness like this? Before I give you what I wrote in this article, anybody like to take the shot in the straw man and say, what could be some reasons in Jewish life, some reasons for illness? Anybody want to shoot out some ideas? Go ahead. It's tough, but Jewish life does have some thoughts that there may be some reasons.
If you believe the Torah, it's punishment. But I don't believe that at all.
That's actually in my article. That's the first piece of my article. So good, I'm going to check that one off my list. So you don't believe that one at all, though Deuteronomy does say again and again, especially in the Tochacha, that among the punishments God's going to give us are failure to fulfill the commandments, besides being chased by jackals and chased by enemies, is terrible, awful illness. So punishment is there. We don't want to accept it. And I agree with you, Rabbi Singer. I don't want to believe it, but it's written in our text. So it's there, and it's the biblical rationale for illness. But it's not the only one. Anybody else have one you'd like to put out? Well, then let me show you what I found in my research. This is a midrash. It shows up in the Midrash Rabbah. I'm going to enlarge it a little bit for us so we can read it. And it also shows up in the Talmud. Let me give you the background for this. Oops. Go away, Blue. Can't make it go away. Anyways, here's the issue. In the beginning, everybody was the same age. Adam was the same age, Eve was the same age, and Abraham says to God, hey, God, make me older than everybody else. Nobody's older, we're all the same age. And you know what? If we're all the same age, no one will respect me. So make me old so everyone will respect an old man. And so God said, you want to be old? I'll make you old. And God made him old. And then people respected elderly and seniors. Then Isaac said, you know, God, I've been suffering. My father had a knife in my neck. Give us some suffering, and this way we'll appreciate, and we'll appreciate caring for others and caregiving, taking care of people. And God said, you want suffering? I'll give you suffering. And God made Isaac suffer. Then Jacob came along. And Jacob said, God, we're all healthy. We live good, long lives. We're all healthy. You know what? Give us a little illness. Give us some illness so that we can appreciate it and we can take care of ourselves and take care of our bodies and take care of our relationships. And then we'll appreciate wellness and we will understand more. And that's what this midrash comes to say. And for some reason, I got it on blue and highlighted. But here's the midrash. Jacob demanded illness, saying to God, Ribbonu ha'olam, sovereign of the universe, a man dies without previous illness and does not settle his affairs with his children. But if he were 2 or 3 days ill, he would settle his affairs with his children. By thy life, replied God, you hast asked well, and it will commence with thee. And so then Jacob got sick. And it says later on in the end of Genesis that someone came to Joseph and said, hey, Joe, your dad is sick, and he went to be with his dad. And Rabbi Levi said, thus Abraham introduced old age, Isaac suffering, and Jacob illness. So therefore, what we learn from this is that there must be some rationale, some reason, some purpose, some meaning that we can either apply to or derive from illness. If everything happens for a reason, then perhaps there's reasons in illness that Jewish life teaches. And I think that Rabbi Singer was right. The first reason that everybody gives when asked this question, in which I wrote in that article, is punishment. We must be punished. Why else would God give me cancer, or that one diabetes, this one health, a heart disease, or the like? Why else could we have such suffering, such illness, if not because we failed to fulfill what God's asked of us? God doesn't afflict us unless we deserve it. So what do you think? Should we agree with that or not? I mean, I would give it one of these, but I recognize that the text says, hey, it's happened. It's core to Jewish thinking. However, it's hard to accept that. Which one of us has done something so heinous that we deserve to watch our nation and our friends and our family and our neighbors suffering with an invisible illness that's infected our country and our planet? Which one of us was so awful that God should say, I should clog your arteries and have you die a terrible death of heart disease or the like? Which one of us? So then, yeah, the book of Job gives us the idea that but that, of course, Job is different though. Job is a bet between Job and his friends and the adversary Satan and God to see if they could bring out the worst in Job, and that was a bet to see what they could do with Job, and Job ended up getting everything back in spades. How about another reason for illness? It's just divine control. This way God is demonstrating that God's in charge. I'd say, well, that's great. Is that why you sent hurricanes to Florida and to the Gulf Coast this week? Does God need to show that God's in charge by sending fires to California and 102 degrees to Riverside today? If that's the way God shows that God's in charge, I'm not sure I can worship that God. Others argue that illness is, or the Rambam actually argued this way, Maimonides, that illness is the opposition for the physician. If people didn't get tooth decay, we wouldn't need to go see Bob as our dentist. Therefore, God gave us tooth decay so Bob could be a dentist. Bob agrees, right? And for many, many years, for a decade plus, I was one of Bob's devoted patients. And thank you, Bob. I smile for you. But some have argued in Jewish texts that illness, and Maimonides said it, that illness was our adversary instead of Satan, and it's our job as human beings, as Jews, to overcome it. Which is why, if I might say, so many Jews have sought the healing professions. And that could be fair. However, I think it's ex post facto. Then there's a teaching from my colleague, Rabbi Kerry Olisky, who argues that illness is just a part of life. It's implanted within us. Some of us may have a genetic mutation and it's there within us. That's perhaps why I and others got cancer. Our genes directed our cells to grow this way instead of to go that way. And if it's part of life, then there can't be a purposive element. It is implanted within us and we have to accept it as being part of who we are. And then the reason is simply it is who we are, not that it's inflicted upon us. And then there's the teaching of Rabbi Harold Kushner. I'm sure every one of us is familiar with his magnificent book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, written in the wake of his son Aaron's death to progeria. And Kushner had the radical idea, written back in the 80s, that some things are random. Some things we'll never understand, and even if we apply a reason to it, it's ex post facto. The reason is really a consolation that we accept for ourselves because we don't want to accept the randomness of the world. We don't want to accept what Rabbi Singer said, that God had a purpose, a punishment. So we say it's random because maybe it is random. And the idea that there's a purpose is our overlay, our attempt to give reason to that which is unreasonable. All of those are ideas and answers to why this could be happening. I want to give one more, which I argued in this article, and which I forgot about until Rabbi Singer asked me to think about this for today. And that is that, well, let me ask, does anybody know what the word for illness or sickness is in Hebrew? A plague. In Hebrew is the machala. Machala, and the word for illness is choleh. We say the prayer for the cholim, right? Mishiberach lecholim. So the word for illness is made out of the chet, vav, and lamed. Anybody know what the word for regular or normal is in Hebrew? We say it at the Havdalah service.
Oh.
Chol. So the word for illness and the word for normal comes from the same root in Hebrew. The word for normal and illness is the same. Which got me thinking, perhaps wellness and health is not the normal state. Perhaps you're born into a world in which there is illness, and our job is to make wellness. That's why we go to the dentist, to be certain that we can keep wellness in the face of, if we don't take care of our teeth, Bob will tell us. Bob will tell me, only brush the ones I want to keep. The rest will go away, right? I was told that by several dentists, including Bob. Only brush the ones you want to keep, because otherwise illness will take it away. If you don't want to keep your heart, go out there and eat all kinds of crazy stuff. If you don't want to be well, as Maimonides said, there's lots of ways to stay sick. So perhaps if illness and normalcy come from the same word, then our task is to accept that, but to work for wellness. And not to ever accept that illness has to be, because otherwise, why do we have medical schools and teachers of healing and wellness and practices of healing and wellness? Our job is to work hard at wellness, but to realize that illness was implanted in us ever since Jacob. God said, you need illness to find meaning, but the real state of affairs before that was wellness. So we've got this task, this imbalance of a scale of justice, coming back to justice, justice you shall pursue. We saw in the video that there's this scale there. We can either let illness be that heavy, normal, standard way of being, which we've come to somewhat live through today in this pandemic, or we can be people who fight for justice and the justice of wellness, to work hard to overcome that seemingly normal state of being and make the ideal state of being, to turn away from the world outside the garden and bring us back a little bit to Pardesh, that garden, to the world of justice. So if all things happen for a reason, perhaps our reason can be that we can be more inspired to do the work of wellness, to overcome that normal state of illness, because those illnesses are out there flying around invisibly. We can't ever stop those viruses. They're out there. But we can make ourselves, our community, the ones we love, the ones we teach, the ones we care for, the ones whose teeth we clean, the ones whose images we study. We can bring a little wellness by heeding the text of our Torah portion. Pursue justice, make it for each other, and don't ever accept that we have to let illness dominate. There's a bigger reason out there. Living with justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Cohn. That's a beautiful drosh, a beautiful understanding of whole and holim, of ordinary and illness. I hope you'll be willing to hang out a little bit at the very end of our service. I know it's late there, but people may want to ask you a couple of questions. So we would be really grateful if you would do that.
Of course.
Thank you. So I would like to introduce also somebody who's in our service tonight, Andrea McNellis, who is our educator. Jory, would you highlight her, please? There she is. Andrea has started July 1st. She's our educator. I'm so excited to have her. She's really wonderful. She went to Hebrew Union College, the school that Rabbi Cohen and I both went to as well. And she has a master's degree both in education and in nonprofit management. So she's very well equipped to be our educator. And when Elise unfortunately retires at the end of December, Andrea will also be our administrator. So welcome, Andrea. We're so glad to have you. And I know we're going to have a great school year. It's going to be virtual because that's life in 2020. We have to do everything virtually, but I trust that it will be really a good experience for all our kids. Does anybody have any big announcements they would like to make before we go on to the Aleinu? And by the way, Rabbi Cohen, there are a lot of thank yous in the chat if you want to take a look. Yeah, a lot of thank yous. Okay, so what we'll do is at the end of the service, if people want to hang out for a few minutes, we'll chat with Rabbi Cohen, and then we'll let him and Susan go to sleep. Okay, and I would like to also thank Jory Yarmoff. You could highlight yourself, Jory, if you'd like. Somewhere, Jory's there. Anyway, Jory has done all the tech tonight, switching back and forth between highlighting and video and all of that, and also, of course, playing a lot of the music. And so we really appreciate that. There he is. And Lynn for doing the lovely candle blessing. So we really appreciate everything that you guys do. So we continue with the Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת. אין עוד כתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We take a moment now to think of those who are no longer with us. May their memories be for a blessing. We're observing Shiva for William Stephen Cohen, brother of Judy Wall, And would anybody like to mention a name for Shiva or Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning? And for the first year of mourning as well, for the first year, we mentioned Werner Kopel as well as Arnie Geller. Are there other names?
Evelyn Nathanson.
Okay, first year, Calic Diaz, Reverend Jane Carl, Elaine Marcus, Dr. Bob Levy, Rosner, Gary Ferris, Adele Lucas. And we are observing yahrzeits this Shabbat for Herman Pollack, Ida Perlmutter, Harriet Eisenberg, Francis Feldstein, Ivan Alfervec, Evelyn Glick, Harriet Kaplan, Pearl Vassa Barnett, Jules Lewis Gilbert, Charlie Woodcock, Sophia Eisendorf, Edward Berkowitz, Joseph Lippo, Rose Treiber, Lane Thomas Gilbert, Morris Wilczek, Helmut Brandt, Blanche Hoffman. Is anyone else observing a yahrzeit?
Erwin Werner.
Please feel free to unmute or to put it in the chat. And you are also welcome to unmute yourself to join us in the Mourner's Kaddish. Yikadal, Yikadash Shemei Rabbah. V'alma divrach yichutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayachon yomechon hayei dechol beit Yisrael v'agala uvizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach v'olam almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'tadar, v'taleh, v'talal, shemei dekudusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, la'amiran be'alma, imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, chayim aleinu al kol Yisrael, imru, amen. Ose shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, as together we say, amen.
Amen.
We conclude with Adon Olam.
It's recorded, and a nice one, by Aminad Avaloni.
Adon olam asher malach haydi dai 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 beterem kol yitzir nivra haydi dai 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 leyednasa bechefza hakol haydi dai 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 azamel shemo nikra haydi dai 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 אחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה היי די 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 אדון עולם אשר מלך היי די 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 בטרם כל יציר נברא היי די 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 ינשא בחפץ הכל היי די 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 אז המלך שמו נקרא היי די 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 והוא אחד ואין שני להמשיל לו להחמירה בלי ראשית, בלי תכלית, ולא העוז והמשרה, היי די 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 די. האדם נולד אשר מלך, היי די 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 די, בטרם כל יציר נברא, היי די 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 די, לעת נשא בחפץ הכל, היי די 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 די, אז המלך שמו נקרא, היי די 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 די. והוא אלי וחי גואלי, וצור חבלי ביצרה, והוא ניסי ומנוס לי, בנת כוסי ביום אקרא, היי די 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 די. האדון עולם אשר מלך, היי די 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 די, בטרם כל יציר נברא, היי די 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 די, לעת נשא בחפץ הכל, היי די 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 די, אז המלך שמו נקרא, היי די 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 די. בידו אבקיד רוחי, בעת אישן ביעירה, ואם רוחי כביעתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא, היי די 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 די. האדון עולם אשר מלך, היי די 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 די, טרם כל יציר נברא, היי די 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 די, לעת נשא בחפץ הכל, היי די 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 די, אז המלך שמו נקרא, היי די 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 די.
Love that version. That's great. And I also, of course, want to thank Cantor Bob, who has been doing a lot of work for us lately. You'd never know that he left. So I also want to point out that Eileen put a message in the chat to remember that our High Holy Day food drive is virtual this year. There are many folks in Riverside who are hungry, so please check the weekly email to find ways to donate. It is a very important mitzvah. So we conclude with Hamotzi, and Cantor Bob has a piece of bread.
Finally. Well, it's going to be a recorded motzi. It's our motzi jam.
But hold it up so people can see the bread.
It's our motzi jam. Lechem min haaretz, we give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So good to have you here tonight. And please stay on if you would like to speak to Rabbi Cohen.